Now, the color range tool is a tool that allows you to make a selection on an image based solely on the colors that it samples. And it's really kind of neat, but before we get actually to the color range tool, I want to kind of set up the project and the best use for color range as we look at this image of Dylan. And of course, he's a redhead, and during the summer his skin gets very, very red, and in this portrait session I think that's a little bit evident. And what we want to do is reduce the impact of that red on his skin and warm it up and make it look just a little less predominant in his complexion. So the main way that I would go about doing this would be to come up to Image, Adjustments, Hue and Saturation, and then I'm going to come up here and choose the reds. And then purposely I'm going to skew this in a different color just so that I can see the area right here that I want to work on. And the way that we correct this area down here would be to just kind of broaden these sliders, and I needed to come this way and less this way. And we simply move these around until the area is covered, and then we can go from here and make corrections. But I want to show you the reason why this is not going to give you the results you're looking for pretty much, because as we look up here in the hair, this color is also bleeding up into the hair, and I don't want to change the tone of the hair. And so this is going to be a very imprecise way of making that selection. Let's try it another way, and this time we're going to go Select, Color Range, and we see the dialog box here, and if we click on the image we see that parts of the face are being included in the selection and parts are being excluded. Now if we adjust the fuzziness slider, that does seem to help, but then we also bring in these other areas of the image that we don't want. So how do we correct that? Well, we just click on it, hold down the Shift key, left click and hold it down, and just drag the sampler around the face. And we need to come down here underneath the chin, choose up here these little shady areas here, make sure you've got those. And so now we've got a really clean selection, and I want to kind of direct your attention to the fact that right here it's really done a good job of separating the hair from the skin. In fact, when we click OK, you'll see the selection established, and you can see very good results in that regard. Now, looking at the image the way it is, we've got marching ants, and that's going to be distracting in my ability to do the adjustment I want to do. So I'm going to hit Control J on the PC, Command J on the Mac, and I'm going to establish 2 copy layers on this image. Go to the Layers palette, and you can see how now we have a selection with its own layer, and I think I'm going to probably take this middle one out because we don't need it. I'm just in the habit of generating 2 copy layers. Now, one thing on here, right below this area, is a little bit of bleed over, and let's just quickly get rid of that. And I'm going to go ahead and use the eraser tool, which I've told you never to use. I'm going to do it anyway. Do what I say, not what I do. You've heard that before, right? So we got rid of that little part that was coming in there, and we see a very, very clean selection. So let's go ahead and bring back our background layer so we can have everything in context. Now we can come up, Adjustments, Hue and Saturation. I can pick the red channel. I can bring this over here, slam that over there so we can see what we're doing. And now we're going to include all that tonality that we had before, but we're not bleeding up into the hair like we were before. Maybe just a tiny bit, and I can go back and correct that with masking and touch up, but it's not a problem. Much better than it was. So since we now have the color range including all the tonality of the face, I can come back to 0, which is where it should be, which is the default setting, and then I'll just reduce the saturation. Just like that. Now if I move the hue slider a little bit over to the right, that warms it up just a little. And again, less is more. Let's experiment with what this might look like. We're going to reduce the lightness and maybe make this just a bit darker. No, that's not going to do anything for us. Let's go back to 0 on that. Now we can hit OK. Come up to Image, and this is finishing off the adjustment, so you get the whole treatment here. We're going to add some yellow, and then also add a little bit of red. But now the red is going in as, not as red on the face, but red on the tone of the image. And so that's a much, much better result than we had before. I'm really liking the way that looks. Let's go ahead and hit OK. Come up here and let's flatten the image so we have our layer. Now I can come up here and go before and after. Before and after. And as I look at that after shot, one tiny little adjustment needs to be made, and I'm going to do this with the color balance. Just ever so slightly take some of that green out and increase the yellows. There we go. There we go. That's it. That's what I'm talking about. Before, we have a very, very definite red tone on his complexion, and then after the correction is made, that's looking a lot better, don't you think? Well, that's how to use the color range tool in Photoshop CS6.